back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping It Sports with M3.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey man, this time we're gonna do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rosansky. Coming to you from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. It's time for Keeping It Sports with M3, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everything's going well for you here on this Tuesday, the 21st day of February. Hope you all had a great week, had a great extended weekend. If you were off for our President's Day yesterday, hopefully you're all well relaxed and everything back in the swing of things for this week. You know, it was so weird this weekend for yours truly, because let's face it, for the last 6 months, we've always had football to look forward to. And listen, I know the XFL got started this past weekend, or returned this past weekend, and you have the USFL coming up in April, but I've never been one to really get locked in with these off-season leagues. The only league I've ever been able to truly lock in for football, on the professional level that is the NFL. And I watch college football. I'm not as indulged, as locked in with that as I am, say, for the NFL on every given Sunday. But that's mostly where my football interest is in. I mean, great love and respect for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I've been a fan of him since I was a kid, for, you know, the venture that we most know him for before acting. But even with his group now running the XFL, can't really get into it. I mean, they've got some weird rules there. And maybe, you know, in a couple of weeks, maybe I'll jump in there. But some of these rules where you can go for a 3-point conversion, or rather than an onside kick, you can go for a 4th and 15 play from your own 20-yard line. I got to see some of that play out before I give it a try, before I say, you know what, this is maybe something I should invest my time in. What I have been investing my time in, of course, if you're watching this, you can see I'm wearing my New York Jets hat on this podcast. I think for the first time since the Jets season ended. And now it's go time for the New York Jets. If you're a New York Jets fan, you're locked in, you're glued in each and every single day when it comes to the Jets. Yes, we're in the midst of the NBA season, about to come out of the All-Star break. You've got the craziness going on in the NHL's season, and Major League Baseball's just getting started with spring training. But the NFL never stops. The machine never stops. And this off-season figures to be a crazy off-season when you consider the fact you have as many as, and maybe I'm stretching it here with some of these teams, I've looked into it and seen that there are about 14 teams here where you have uncertainty at the quarterback position. The Dolphins, when it comes to the health of Tua Tagovailoa. The Ravens, mostly this cat and mouse game that they've got going on with Lamar Jackson. I'll get to that in a few minutes. The Titans may look to upgrade from Ryan Tannehill. The Houston Texans have the 2nd overall pick. The Raiders, as we know, cut Derek Carr. The Giants, discuss in a few minutes what they could be looking to do with Daniel Jones. The Commanders need a quarterback. The Packers seem ready to move on from Aaron Rodgers. Buccaneers need a quarterback with Brady retiring. The Panthers and Saints need new quarterbacks. The Falcons need a quarterback. The Seahawks have Geno Smith as a free agent, though they'd like to bring him back. And then there's, of course, the team that tugs at my heart. The team that drives me insane. No, probably more insane than some people already think I am. The New York Jets. Who, as we know, their roster, on paper at least, looks like they have a team. They can compete for playoff spots right now. And even, say, with the right quarterback, even maybe be that team that takes that unprecedented leap into being in a conference title game next year and possibly competing for a Super Bowl. It's not the craziest thing in the world. I mean, who would have thought the Bengals 2 years ago were just going to leap right into the Super Bowl? Or the Eagles, we saw how stacked their roster was this past year, but it took the emergence of Jalen Hurts taking the step to that next level from a good quarterback to now a top-of-the-league quarterback to get there. Well, the Jets, they have the talent to support a top-of-the-league quarterback. The problem is they've never been able to draft a young quarterback that turns into that. You look at their last two top 5 draft picks, Sam Darnold, they moved on from after 3 years, and Zach Wilson, we all want to put in bubble wrap, put in timeout, and never see him take another step up for the New York Jets. To say he was atrocious in the second half of this season would be an understatement. And you can't go into next year, unfortunately, with Micah White as the starting quarterback, because as cute of a story as it turned into with Mike White, let's face it, a guy like that has his limits, and he has shown that he has the propensity to getting hurt. So the Jets know they have this goal to look into this offseason of upgrading massively at the quarterback position, because you can't just sit here and say that you're going to have all of these guys forever. This is not Major League Baseball where it's an uncapped sport and you could just hold on to everybody forever. Along the way, you have to make painful, difficult decisions at times, who to keep, who to move on from. And you're not going to have this same young core of good young wide receivers and running backs together at the same time forever. You're not going to have all of this defense together forever. This defense, which played like a top 5 defense as this season played on, but they were also on the field too long. And that's partially in blame to the offense not being able to put together extended drives and give these guys a rest. It doesn't matter how many times you rotate through players on that defensive line as well as Robert Saleh and company did. You have to give your defense a rest. They cannot be out there on the field for, 32, 33 plus minutes a game and think that they're going to just continue to hold up, even as great as the defense played at times throughout this season. But the Jets face a dilemma here when it comes to the search for this veteran quarterback. Because as we all know, and I think most Jet fans are on my side with this, the number one target is Aaron Rodgers. Shoot for the moon. He's not going to be here forever, but you take whatever he can give us. You take, the fact that you bring him in, then you can match up with the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals, the Ravens if they keep Lamar Jackson, the Chargers, the Jaguars, all who have young elite quarterbacks, all guys who were in that same position that Aaron Rodgers was in 10 to 12 years ago. But Rodgers has shown that he could still compete with those guys, that he still gives you as good a chance as those guys give their respective teams. The problem is Aaron Rodgers, I don't want to put him on the level of, say, a Kyrie Irving, but you never know what the hell is going on with this guy. For the majority of the last week, he has been on this lockdown retreat, whatever you want to call it, darkness retreat, where he's sitting in pitch black for 4 consecutive days, trying to clear his mind, almost trying to go into a hallucination phase of figuring out what he wants to do with his future. Because it's not only just him and the Packers are ready to move on from each other. The Packers, it's clear they want to move on and see what they have in Jordan Love in his final year of his rookie contract before they got to make a decision whether to extend him after next year or possibly draft a new quarterback. Plus, they're tired of possibly the wishy-washiness with Rodgers each of the last couple of offseasons. Not to the level of Brett Favre, but still always been kind of undecided on his future. And that's where it becomes a problem for the Jets because of the fact that you're going to have to give up draft picks to get Aaron Rodgers. Maybe not 2 first-round draft picks, but say your 13th overall pick this year and a conditional draft pick next year, second-round pick, third, whatever, depending on what he wants to do after next year, that will base it on. But can you really risk, if you're the Jets, giving up draft capital for a guy who may only give you 1 year? You can't, even as bad as the Jets' history is, we could be in the same position this time next year. If he comes out, has a great year, they don't win a Super Bowl, but then all of a sudden this time next year he announces, oh, he's retiring, he's done. And the Jets are left sitting there with their pants down once again, trying to figure out the quarterback position. And where it creates another problem is the fact that I'm sure a lot of you saw over the weekend, they had Derek Carr in for a visit. Derek Carr, who was just released by the Raiders last Wednesday and wisely played his entire situation out. Told the Raiders, I'm not accepting any trade. I want to become a legitimate free agent, get more guaranteed money, and choose my future, not help you guys after the crap I've been through with y'all for the last several years. Well, by all reports, especially by Jeff Darlington, the visit went well. The Jets think he's the type of quarterback that could potentially lead them to a championship. But you don't know if Carr is truly serious about wanting to be a Jet or if he's just using the Jets as a negotiation tactic to get more money out of the Saints, who he's already visited with, or the Panthers or the Buccaneers, teams that are down south in more warmer conditions year-round than he is. Now, I'm not going to make a big deal over the fact that he's got an awful record in outdoor stadiums when the temperature is under 40 degrees, because remember, one thing you're not taking into account there is it's not just he's playing in below 40 degree temperature after practicing all week and working out in mid 70s, low 80s type weather out there in California. What you also have to take into account there is the time difference, because most of those games, yeah, it's 1 o'clock East Coast time, but his body is telling him it's 10 a.m. These guys don't just completely adjust time-wise like that, especially when most of these West Coast teams usually travel in on late Friday night or early Saturday morning. That is not enough time to completely get your body adjusted to a time change. So I think if he were here, he would, and practicing in this weather year round, he'd do fine. He'd be great here. We've seen the numbers that this guy can put up. Let's not forget, Derek Carr has never played with a top 10 level defense. He's always had to carry the day for the Raiders, had to lead. Most of his wins have been comeback victories. So he's had a lot on his shoulders, and his defense has let him down a lot over the years. I'm not saying he's a perfect quarterback. I'm not saying he's on the level of Aaron Rodgers, but you can definitely win with him. You can definitely take steps forward with him. Hell, 2 years ago, did anybody think that the Rams were just going to jump up and be a immediate Super Bowl contender with Matthew Stafford? A lot of the same things that people are saying about Derek Carr, they were saying about Matthew Stafford back then. And Stafford had less weapons, had less to work with at times than Carr after the Megatron era. And look how it's turned out wonderfully and turned the narrative around on his career. And the same thing could apply for Carr if he comes to the Jets. Although I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's truly using us as a negotiating ploy. But let's say he is committed to being a New York Jet. Then why didn't the Jets make an offer this past weekend? Why did they let him have the chance to leave and potentially talk to other teams? Because remember, because he was cut right now, he could sign with anybody. He could sign the dotted line right now and join a new team. He does not have to wait till the March 15th date of the beginning of the new league year, like, say, Lamar Jackson or Daniel Jones, guys who are possibly going to be free agents, can and do. Or trading for a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. You don't have to, you can agree in principle, but you can't make that deal official until then. Carr can join his new team if he wants to right now. But it's a dangerous game that the Jets are potentially playing right here, because the reason they did not make an offer to Derek Carr, as much as they seemingly like him, as much as they seem to have a great meeting, and you're hearing so many great things coming out of Florham Park about this. You're hearing his brother go on NFL Network talk raving about the meeting over the weekend. Woody Johnson plays a big role in all this. And Woody Johnson and Joe Douglas probably have their eye on that golden prize at the top of the hill, and that being Aaron Rodgers. But can you really just wait around for Aaron to make his decision? I mean, I think the Packers are going to make a decision sooner rather than later on this, even though it would hurt them salary cap wise, trading him before June 1st. They'd like a decision before the start of the league year so that they know how they're going to be building the team around Jordan Love going into next year. But if you wait around, if you're the Jets, Derek Carr signs somewhere else, and then 5 minutes later, you find out that either Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to be traded to you or is retiring, you're screwed, because the other options are not so appetizing. I do not believe that Joe Douglas will give up 2 first-round draft picks to trade for either Lamar Jackson or Daniel Jones if they're placed on the franchise tag. And after that, let's look at some of these guys that could be available. Ryan Tannehill, I mean, he's okay, but you're not winning anything major with Ryan Tannehill. Look at his career with Tennessee. They're a good team, but they've kind of plateaued on where they can go with him as their quarterback. Baker Mayfield, he kind of wears out his welcome wherever he goes. Sam Darnold, been there, done that. So you've got to make sure you get at least one of these two guys. But the problem is waiting around could leave you screwed. You sign Derek Carr, and all of a sudden you find out Aaron Rodgers, he wanted to come to you. You let Derek Carr leave, go sign somewhere else. Rodgers retires. You're screwed. That's why if you're the Jets, you have to have some kind of intel. You have to have some kind of knowledge right here, right now. What is the future of Aaron Rodgers? He does his weekly spot on the Pat McAfee show, but I guarantee he gave nothing as far as insight on that. He probably doesn't even talk to the Packers yet on what he's going to do. In his mind, probably what happens, he walked out of that room of darkness, stuck his right pointer finger in his mouth, and then stuck it in the air to see which way the wind is blowing, and that's how he's making his decision. This whole room of darkness thing is a bunch of nonsense. But if you're the Jets, you want to swing for the fences, you got to make sure one of these two guys is your quarterback. Otherwise, it's another one of these reasons why we say same old Jets. You can't let yourself be held out in the cold without one of them. But you're playing a dangerous game because you're worried that, you choose the secondary prize, should we say, and all of a sudden you find out you could have had the golden ticket. But you're waiting around for that golden ticket to make his decision, and your backup plan could blow up in your face. So now, as a Jet fan, I'm nervous. I'm constantly looking at my phone, constantly looking at Twitter, wondering how this is going to play out. And I'm left with more questions than answers at this point, other than the fact that, you don't have to give up draft picks to get Derek Carr, but it would be great. It would be game-changing if you got Aaron Rodgers. But if you do get Rodgers, you need to make sure he's not just staying for this year. You need at least a 2, preferably 3-year commitment from this guy. Because if you have Aaron Rodgers in the fold for 3 years, you're a Super Bowl contender. Derek Carr's here for the next 5-6 years. You have a great chance of ending that playoff drought of the last 12 years. But are you truly a Super Bowl contender? That is something that remains to be seen. All right, a lot I want to talk about today, including some of the noise surrounding some of these other possible free agent quarterbacks. Also a change as far as coaching that took place in the last week. Give you some thoughts on NBA All-Star Weekend, load management, mixing some baseball as we go on as well. So a lot I want to talk about today. Glad that any of you could listen to the podcast, or if you're watching it right now, hey, thank you very much. And please sit back, relax, put your feet up if you have a table in front of you, and continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
Now, I was mentioning before the break that there's other quarterbacks that are going to be available in the next couple of weeks. And I don't look at any of these potential soon-to-be available quarterbacks as options for the New York Jets, because in all likelihood, these guys are going to be having the franchise tag placed on them. And maybe I'm reading the room wrong here, but I don't see Joe Douglas as being someone that's going to give away 2 first-round draft picks for either one of these quarterbacks, even though in the case of Lamar Jackson, you have a guy that is in his mid-20s, still in the prime of his career, and the only reason he's about to be a free agent is stubbornness on the side of both him and the Baltimore Ravens. In the case of Lamar Jackson, I don't understand how he can be doing everything he's doing without an agent. Why, if you're a professional athlete, even at a professional athlete of this level, of this talent level, how you can go on without having an agent to handle these situations for you, how you can avoid the potential distraction that is contract negotiations, because you're always going to get asked about it. You know, if you have an agent, at least you could say, oh, that's questions that you should save for my agent. I'm just looking to play football. Without an agent, you're going to keep getting asked about it. And rather than having your main focus on playing the game and preparing for the games each Sunday, this is always going to be a topic that hangs over you and people are going to want to ask you about every single time you have a bad performance or every time your team loses a game. And in the case of a guy that is this talented, when it's been a looming topic, a looming subject for that franchise for 2 years now. Now, the stubbornness on their part is they're willing to pay him a certain level of guaranteed money, but he wants the contract to be, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, but it seems as though he wants the contract to be 100% guaranteed. He saw what Deshaun Watson got 2 years ago. He said, wait a minute, time out here. I've been a model citizen. I've given my all to this team every single time I'm on the field. I'm as good or better than this guy. And he's getting 100% guaranteed money, and you can't give it to me. Now the Ravens can turn around and look at him and say, you've been hurt each of the last 2 years. Why are we going to take that risk? But he could also say, all right, then where are you going quarterback position without me? Because the problem for the Ravens is they're never bad enough to be able to draft a top-level quarterback. They're never bad enough to be up there in the top 5 to 10 picks of the draft, where you're usually seeing your upper echelon of prospects drafted. They got lucky years ago because not a lot of organizations believed in Lamar Jackson. He fell to late in the first round, and in his final move as head of football operations, Ozzie Newsome traded back into the first round and drafted this kid as their quarterback moving forward. And when he's played, he's been great. He's been golden. He's been as good as any quarterback in the league. The problem is each of the last 2 years, he has not been able to stay on the field late in the season, and that's led to the Ravens' demise. And they held in for as long as they could this past year, but you knew they had no shot in the playoff game against Cincinnati with the quarterbacks that they were running out there. I know they're really going to seriously look Lamar Jackson in the eyes and say, oh, we're comfortable with running Tyler Huntley out there as our quarterback this year. Come on, give me a break. No one's buying that. But where today is an important day for the Ravens is now, between now and March 7th, they can place one or of two types of the franchise tag on him. I say two types of the franchise tag because people don't realize that there is an exclusive tag and a non-exclusive tag. The exclusive tag is a 1-year deal worth $45.2 million guaranteed, the average annual salary of the 5 highest paid quarterbacks in the sport. And that has raised this year because you had 4 quarterbacks last offseason sign contracts of at least $46 million per year. And Lamar can then only negotiate with the Baltimore Ravens. He either plays on that deal or negotiates with the Ravens for a longer-term deal with more guaranteed money. Then there's the non-exclusive tag, which isn't worth as much money-wise. It's only $32.4 million for next year. He can negotiate with any other team, but if he signs an offer sheet from another team, the Ravens either have the right to match that offer or they get 2 first-round draft picks from that team in letting him leave. And I think there might be, if that's the tag he gets placed on him, I think there's teams that will do it. I don't think the Jets would do it, but I think the Falcons would do it. I think the Saints would possibly do that. The Carolina Panthers, any of these teams in the NFC South where it's basically a wasteland at the quarterback position. The Commanders might consider doing that. If it's an AFC team, forget it. The Ravens are going to match the offer. But I don't think we're going to get to that point. I foresee at some point in the next 2 weeks, Lamar Jackson's going to get the exclusive tag placed on him. And then it's going to be a cat and mouse game between these two sides. And we'll see if Lamar plays it out to his benefit. The guy I'm concerned for, though, is Giants quarterback Daniel Jones. And listen, I'm all for players getting their money. Now, this is their livelihood, and especially in the NFL, your career could end on the very next play. So get as much money as possible. I really don't mind when a player holds out unless they're doing it in consecutive seasons. Like there were times Darrelle Revis was doing that late in the first part of his tenure with the New York Jets. But you really got to wonder, who's in Daniel Jones' ear? Who's telling him all this information? Because Daniel Jones might be overplaying his hand here. And I get it. It all is based on when you're a free agent, when you become available, and your value is whatever a team is willing to pay you. But in what world can he or any agent that has represented him, whether it was CAA or now it looks like he's moving on to Athletes First, in what world can his group actually be believing that he's going to get $45 million a year? Are you out of your damn mind? Listen, he had a good year last year. He was a factor in why the Giants were able to have a quick turnaround, even with a roster that was less than appetizing, and make the postseason. But let's not act like Daniel Jones was an MVP contender. His numbers were good. He had 22 total touchdowns, passing and rushing, only 5 interceptions, threw for over 3,200 yards, and a career-high 67% completion percentage. But he was not a star. He was not an elite quarterback last year. And part of the problem here is the quarterback pay scale has become so messed up that every single one of these guys now, when they reach free agency, as long as they were at least competent, think that they're worth the biggest money possible. There was that group about 5-6 years ago that got paid all in one time. That group that included the likes of like Andy Dalton and Jimmy Garoppolo and a bunch of middle tier quarterbacks that all started breaking the bank and getting paid $30+ million. And that led the star quarterbacks to wanting $40 million. So once that happened, every quarterback started asking for $40 million. Guys that didn't deserve it, like a Dak Prescott, like a Kyler Murray. Hell, if you give them some truth serum right now, I guarantee the Arizona Cardinals wish they could turn back the clocks and make Kyler have to play through his rookie contract with how much of an immature brat he acts like at times. And while Daniel Jones has handled himself all class, has been a model citizen here, works hard, and by all accounts is a good teammate, and you saw a massive improvement in him this year. Let's not get this confused and act like he was the reason why the Giants made this big leap in record this year. If you ask me what the Giants should do, they look at him and be like, all right, you think that you're worth that. Then here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you the chance to go out and negotiate, but we're going to place the non-exclusive franchise tag on you so that if another team does think you're worth that and is willing to pay you that, we're getting some compensation in return. We're willing to bring you back, but you got to come back on our terms. You got to play some ball here. You've rarely seen not only teams use the non-exclusive tag, but you've rarely seen anybody jump at signing someone on that non-exclusive tag. And I think it will be startling to Daniel Jones, even for as many quarterbacks that are out there, or many quarterback needing teams that are out there, what they think he's truly worth if he gets that tag put on him. But as we say, all it takes is one. All it takes is that one crazy owner out there. And if that crazy owner does emerge himself, say it's Washington that emerges, do the Giants leap at matching that? Or do they take the draft pick composition and continue building forward with a new quarterback? Because remember, Daniel Jones was not drafted by this regime. They inherited him from the Dave Gettleman, Pat Shurmur, Joe Judge regimes. And speaking of the Washington Commanders, the Commanders might have received the benefit of the rest of the league once again passing up on a very high quality head coach candidate. Because you start to wonder what the hell Eric Bieniemy actually has to do to get a head coaching opportunity. And some of it I do think, as much as people don't want to talk about it, some of it I do think is the good old boys club that still exists amongst NFL owners. The fact that you don't have many minority owners, and the fact that there are still so many owners that seem hesitant to want to hire a black head coach, even though he's an offensive-minded head coach, and we are in an offensive-minded era in this league. But what really hurts Eric Bieniemy is the fact that he's been in the shadow of Andy Reid. Even though, let's face it, his two predecessors, they each got jobs. They each got opportunities. Doug Peterson has gotten 2 jobs since leaving Andy Reid. And Matt Nagy, he got the chance to suck with the Chicago Bears and is now back there trying to lick his wounds and repair his career. But Bieniemy probably realizes that, hey, leaving Andy Reid might be the best chance I get at ever becoming a head coach, going and becoming the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders. Because when he was with the Chiefs, yes, he had to have played a factor in the growth and the development into the superstar and growing by day legend that Patrick Mahomes is. But he only receives so much credit when you consider Andy Reid still calls the plays. And for a majority of that time, as successful of a 5-year run this is, making the conference title game every year, going to 3 Super Bowls and winning 2 of them. With Reid calling plays and then having weapons the likes of Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill there during that time, the offensive coordinator is only going to receive so much credit in this development of this young quarterback. And he has a chance with going to Washington to show what he's really about. Because you look at the Chiefs the last 5 years were first in points per game, yards per game, yards per play, and total quarterback rating. In that same time frame, the Commanders were bottom 3 in all of those stat categories. So if he can do some magic and turn the Commanders' offense around, whether it be with Taylor Heineke, Sam Howell, Carson Wentz if he's still there, if they draft another quarterback at 17th overall, or they say sign one of these quarterbacks in free agency, say a Derek Carr or Daniel Jones or Jimmy Garoppolo, somebody. If the Commanders next year turn their offense around and have a successful season, are well run offensively, with him calling plays, that can only boost his stock. Plus, he also looks at it and says, yeah, there's new ownership here. And yes, or coming, excuse me. And yes, you still have Ron Rivera as the head coach. But Ron Rivera, we've seen, has had some health scares, has had some health worries the last couple of years. Who knows how much longer he's going to be the head coach. And with Daniel Snyder likely on his way out and new ownership here in the foreseeable future, it's Bieniemy's opportunity to not just impress the other 31 owners in the league, but potentially impress new ownership down there in our nation's capital. All right, going to turn my attention to the NBA on the other side, because this past weekend was All-Star Weekend. And besides the All-Star festivities, a lot of things to talk about coming out of this weekend. Continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
If there's anything I could change about the league to make it better, probably just all the guys sitting resting. That's the only thing I probably don't like. Just play, man. If you 80%, you got to play. I don't like all the sitting, missing games and stuff. Like these people might have enough money to come to one game. You know what I'm saying? And that might be the game they come to, and then you sitting out. You know what I'm saying? So I take pride in trying to play every game, because I don't know, it might be one fan that has never seen me play, and I'm trying to play. So that's the only thing I don't like. Guys just sitting out.
Well said. That, of course, was the voice of the young star from the Minnesota Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards, who over this weekend at All-Star Weekend, it became a big topic of discussion. What to me is one of the biggest problems in the NBA, and is something that they are going to have to solve going forward, and that's load management. We all know it was created by Greg Popovich years ago, but it's been exacerbated to an nth degree by a bunch of these stars across the league. I mean, you look at it, 5 years ago, you had about 26, 27 players that played all 82 games of the regular season. Right now, as we sit here today, only 5 players have played in every single game this season. And I understand guys get nicked up. Guys will strain hamstrings, even as great conditioned athletes as they are today. As much of peak condition that they keep themselves in today. But they also have benefits that the generation before them didn't have. Like, as Charles Barkley was saying over the weekend, there's a difference between being hurt and load management. His generation survived playing in Chuck Taylors and flying commercial for a lot less money. They weren't making the money these guys are making today, and part of that is because of the TV deals, and the endorsements aren't to the level of what they were back then. You didn't have streaming services as well that could carry these games. But for the life of me, can't understand how Commissioner Adam Silver, who I think he's by a large part done a good job as the commissioner of this league. There's some things that could stand to improve, and this is one of them. I don't see how he doesn't look at this and see this as a big issue for this league, because Anthony Edwards put it best. Some of these people might only have enough money to go to one game during the season because they're not in the best of financial conditions. They go there, they're expecting to see LeBron James or Kevin Durant or a younger star like a Zion Williamson or Anthony Davis. The guy that they have their heart set on seeing, they get there and they find out that guy is not playing that night for no other reason to rest. And you would think that there's some incentive that the league can put on this for teams, or some incentive they could put on it for the players, and have some kind of understanding with the players in the negotiations for the next CBA, saying, listen, you're our business partner as much as the television providers are. We can't have you guys just sitting out for no reason whatsoever. If you're injured, if you have something that's keeping you out for weeks at a time, that's one thing. But you can't just sit out just for the sake of sitting out. And some people are out there saying, lower the schedule. Takes away from the number of back-to-backs. Play 70, 72 games over this same time frame, and maybe that will lessen. That won't solve anything. Rather than only playing 65 of the 82 games, players will then start playing 55 of the 70-game schedule. And where the problem lies there is the fact that we've placed such an emphasis on not just the postseason, but ring counts. Somewhere along the way, we've decided that's the only way to keep score. That's the only way of showing a player's true greatness, rather than the process of getting there. The grind, the grit, the amazing individual accomplishments along the way. Kevin Durant talked about a week ago when he was being introduced with the Phoenix Suns, saying how, he loved the grind with the Brooklyn Nets. And I think more so he was talking about there was all the nonsense that was going on off the court. But these players back in the 80s, 90s, hell, even the 70s, they grinded through this regular season, because part of the true greatness of an athlete is seeing how they perform when they're not at 100%, when they are dealing with a little bit of fatigue or soreness on a given night. Something that won't hamstring them for a long time, but for that given night, they're not feeling their 100% absolute best. And that's how we determine greatness. Not how you are when you're at 100% and everything's working right. No, it's how you're able to overcome adversity, how you're able to overcome any potential hiccup, anything that causes you from being at less than 100%, where you have to grind through being at 75, 80, 85% on a given night, because you being out there gives your team the best opportunity to win that game. And it shows the world that, hey, I could still do this, even that my not 100% best. and everyone sees what Kawhi does on a year in, year out basis. And they're like, oh, if he's doing that and he's getting great results out of it, I should be doing the same damn thing. Now, I hope somewhere along the line we can put an end to this. I hope somewhere along the line a pride factor steps back in and these players realize that for the love of the game, it's for their best interest, it's for the fans' best interest, it's for the sport's best interest to stop with load management. As I said, you're truly injured, that I can't complain what you said now. But just for a little soreness, a little fatigue, come on. What, to rest yourself up for the postseason because that has become the only way we keep score these days? It really, as a fan, it makes you sick. Along with what these players are doing right now where, they don't like the situation they're at in that given moment in time, so they force their way out. This player empowerment has gotten out of control. I mean, Barkley was talking about it over the weekend as well. He said, quote, "You can't take my money and say you want to divorce me in 6 months to a year because you can only get the max from this team. You can't take all the money and then say, hey, I want a divorce." So I'm pretty sure the next thing that's going to come out of the CBA, I have no doubt in my mind these guys are going to get locked out. And I've been saying this for a while. We're in for a rather lengthy lockout. We're in for a battle the next time they come to the negotiating table because things like this have got to stop. Things like what Harden's done twice, what Ben Simmons has done, Donovan Mitchell, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant. Durant had some comments over the last couple of days I want you all to hear, and then I'll comment on this as well.
I don't think it's bad for the league. It's bringing more eyes to the league. More people are more excited. The tweets that I got and the news hits that we got from me being traded, Kyrie being traded, just bring more attention to the league. And that's really what makes you money is when you get more attention. So I think it's great for the league, to be honest. Teams been trading players and making acquisitions for a long time. Now when a player can kind of dictate where he wants to go and leaving free agency or demand a trade, it's just part of the game now. So I don't think it's a bad thing. It's bringing more and more excitement to the game.
All of what Durant, to a certain extent, said is true. It's bad because not only do you have these super teams being put in place, but the team that trades the player away never gets full value in return. I mean, listen, Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson could turn out to be very good players for the Brooklyn Nets. But they're not going to turn into Kevin Durant. In all likelihood, none of the draft picks that they got from the Suns in return are going to turn into Kevin Durant unless they take some of that draft capital and turn it around and get the next superstar that is unhappy in their situation before the CBA is up. And it's one thing when you have a player on an expiring contract and they let the team know in advance, hey, I'm not coming back here after this year, so you might as well get something from me while you can. But in the case of Durant, in the case of Donovan Mitchell, case of, to a lesser extent, Ben Simmons, when they still have multiple years left on their contract, I want one of these owners to grow a set, look the player in the eye and say, hell no. You're either playing for me and getting paid by me, or you're playing for nobody. This has got to stop. This has got to... I'm all for players getting their money, as I've said. NBA, NFL, all these leagues. Get paid for the true greatness that you are. But show a commitment to your contract. Show a commitment to the team you chose to join. And Kevin Durant says, "Oh, he loves the grind. He loves the process that he had to go through with Brooklyn." Well, clearly he didn't, because when times got tough and he became the only star left there, he found his way out very quickly. And unless the league steps up and does something, it's going to keep on happening. They've got to make sure that the players realize you're our business partner. You're not our boss. When you're a free agent, fine. You have the choice to go where you want. But when you have a contract, you better play through that contract and realize that unless we completely fall apart, you're going to be here for the entirety of it. I didn't get too much locked into All-Star Saturday night. I mean, some of the things have lost their excitement on me. Now, the three-point contest is still pretty good, even though you didn't have Steph or Clay this year due to injuries to Steph and Clay not making the All-Star team. You still had Dame Lillard. You had Jason Tatum to a lesser extent. Julius Randle was part of it, but it wasn't maxed out, loaded with stars. And then the dunk contest. And the dunk contest is slowly but surely dissipating before our eyes. I mean, congratulations to this kid, Mac McClung, a guy that wasn't even on an NBA roster around this time last week, had to be signed to a two-way contract by the Sixers just to qualify for it. And he clearly works at his craft with this, with all of the videos you see him posting, dunking on social media. But this event, all of these events on All-Star Weekend were made for the stars. Were made for us to see the stars do their incredible feats of athleticism outside of the competition of actual game action. I mean, the reason we've gotten so far away from stars being part of the dunk contest is because of all of the endorsements, all of the individuality of these players in the NBA. Whereas back in the 90s, 80s, 70s, they took pride in competing in this. They realized that they weren't just doing it for themselves. They were doing it for the betterment of the league and the entertainment of the fans. These players are so damn afraid of losing that they don't want to risk their brand, their image, by losing in the dunk contest, losing in the three-point contest. And quite frankly, it is sad. We, as the fans, come out as the biggest loser in this. And you know, I wish that with the dunk contest, what they would do is do more things like what you saw with Mac McClung here, where you're bringing in outsiders who maybe they're not necessarily great in-game basketball players, but they do all this crazy, unique stuff on YouTube, on Instagram, and whatnot when it comes to dunks. And maybe that will inspire the players, seeing those guys do that in dunk contests, saying, hey, you know what? I want to challenge this outsider. I want to go up against this guy and show him there's a reason why I'm in the NBA and they're not. And hopefully at some point, well, I don't think it will happen, but I'm holding out hope that at some point we get back to the dunk contest and All-Star Saturday night in total mattering and it feeling like a big deal. I'm going to take one last break here, come back on the other side, close things out with some thoughts on Major League Baseball. Continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
All right, only a few more minutes here, but I wanted to touch upon some things that are making news in Major League Baseball, because with spring training getting underway, it's usually around this time that Major League Baseball will announce any additions or changes to rules for the upcoming season. And there's the rules that I like, and then there's the rule that continues to loom over this sport that I dislike. And that is, of course, the extra innings rule. The rule where Major League Baseball, they're now making it a permanent thing where in all regular season extra inning games, a runner will be placed at second base to begin the 10th inning, and in every subsequential extra inning after that until a winner is determined. It's been given the nickname over the last couple of years, the Manfred Man. You've even seen at some ballparks, fans begin to chant in the 10th inning, play real baseball, and I am 100% with them. Listen, I understand what baseball wants to do here. They don't want a situation where we're playing a 25-inning game, the game run until 3 o'clock in the morning, and a team completely burn out their bullpen and be in the situation where they got to either send guys to the minor leagues or potentially designate someone for assignment just to clear a 40-man roster spot up to bring someone up from double or triple A to fill out the pen for the next night. But this is a little bit over the top. And yes, in extra innings in the regular season, before this rule, games were going long because of the fact that everybody would turn into home run mode. Everybody wanted to be the hero. Everybody wanted to have their Joe Carter moment. And there's still the chance for that because this rule only applies for the regular season, not the postseason. But if you're going to do this rule, start it in the 13th inning. Let them play a couple of innings of normal baseball. And then after that, once you start to get to the underbelly of the bullpen, once you start to get to the 5th and 6th reliever of a team's bullpen, then you turn to this rule. Go from playing 9 innings one way to then immediately extra innings. The rules switch around. I don't like it, never have liked it. I understood why they put it in place at the time because they put it in place during the pandemic, not wanting to keep the guys in the ballpark together forever, just in case somebody had COVID-19 in their system and that potentially lead to a spreading situation. But why exacerbate this? The fans don't like it. The players are kind of on it. Baseball sometimes, listen to your fan base. They're listening to the fan base clearly in one thing, in realizing that the pace of play was going so slow. It's not about the length of an actual game. It's about how much action is taking place in that time frame. You can have a game that goes 3.5 hours and it's nonstop action. And then you have a game that's 2:45 and it's a slug, just a total snooze fest to get through and bear through the entire 9 innings. So I really can't stand the extra innings rule, but I do like what they're doing with this pitch clock thing. It's going to take some time for everyone to get used to. And if you haven't heard the full nuances of this rule, it's the pitcher will have 15 seconds once they get the baseball to throw the ball toward home plate with the bases empty, 20 seconds with a runner on base. And it's not like, you have to have the baseball out of your hands by 0. No, you have to at least be starting your motion before 0. Otherwise, there's a penalty against you. If the pitcher hasn't done that, there'll be a ball put on the ball strike counter. If the batter, though, is dilly-dallying, stepping out of the box, adjusting their gloves, they're not ready to go, but the pitcher is in that time frame, then there's going to be a strike called against them. Pitchers are only allowed to throw over to first base twice in a given at bat. On the third time, either they must pick the guy off or the base runner gets to advance the base. And that's going to lead to some interesting things here, because I think we're going to see a lot more catchers throwing over the first or catchers throwing over the third than we've been used to seeing over the last several years. And I'm sure over time that will be edited, that will be adjusted once they see that. But I'm for this pitch clock here. Like I said, will be something that you got to adjust to. But who really needs these pitchers walking around the mound a full minute in between pitches? I think the starters will adjust to it pretty well. The guys that are going to have a hard time with it are some of these relief pitchers. Like, especially Aroldis Chapman now with the Kansas City Royals. Hey, that's going to be fun to watch. Or some of these other flamethrowers, the guys that are throwing 100-plus miles an hour in the league, that are so used to having themselves set, so 100% prepared in between pitches that they're taking so much time to adjust themselves. No, you got to be ready to go within 15, or if there's a runner on base, 20 seconds, or it's going to be a violation. So that's going to be fun to watch. Hell, it's going to be fun for the fans at the ballpark or watching at home to watch along with this, because you're going to be looking at that clock. You're going to be looking at the pitcher, and when it hits 0, if they have not began their motion, that's a violation. So you may see some countdowns or hear some countdowns beginning in certain ballparks. So between that rule and the end of the defensive shift, I'm loving it, but I really could do without the runner on second base. Now the Yankees are going into spring training here with a slight injury to their pitching staff. And I say slight because this guy, let's face it, was a total bum of a trade. They got nothing out of him last year and may get nothing out of him going forward, and that's Frankie Montas. After they didn't make a trade with Luis Castillo of the Cincinnati Reds last year, he went to Seattle. They settled for Frankie Montas from the Oakland A's. And he was a total bum for the Yankees. Had an over 6 ERA and 1.5 WHIP in 8 starts, and showed why he's a guy that pitches well in that dump of a stadium that the Oakland A's continue to play in, but can't pitch well anywhere else. And to me, while you don't like seeing guys get hurt, and I hope he recovers for him and his family's sake, recovers from his shoulder surgery well, is able to come back and continue his career, this is addition by subtraction. I don't need to see this guy pitch for the Yankees again. When it comes to now there being a 5th starter competition, it's going to be Domingo Germán versus Clark Schmidt. And I think that the Yankees would be better off letting that spot be used by Clark Schmidt. He was a first-round draft pick of theirs back in 2017. We've seen bits and pieces of him here and there as a reliever, but never gotten to see a full run of him as a starter. And by now, we know what Domingo Germán is. He's an all-right number 4 starter. He'll pitch pretty well for you for 8 or 9 starts, but always somewhere along the way, there's an injury where he misses 3 weeks to a month because he's so slender. Clark Schmidt was a top prospect for this organization at one point. You got to see what you have in this kid. He just turned 27 years old. It's time to see if he can truly be a starter for this team going forward, or if he's just another Chad Green and has a long-term future in the bullpen. But what I really want to tell my fellow Yankee fans here is to calm down. I've told them this a bunch of times this offseason. Chill out. Relax. It is February 21st. There's no reason to overreact, freak out to anything you're seeing right now. The panic is over, who's playing left field? And there's been some discussion over the last couple days of Judge playing left field on days when Giancarlo Stanton plays the outfield because Stanton's more comfortable in right. Although Stanton, to me, should be the one that has to adjust which spot he's at. But either way, I want Stanton to play the outfield because it seems as though that he's better offensively when he plays in the field. And he wasn't even that bad of an outfielder as it was. I've never understood why the Yankees pigeonholed him into being a DH. And it's then when the injuries started to happen. It wasn't the other way around where he was an injury-riddled guy his entire career, so they had to make him a DH. No, this is not a David Ortiz situation where you have this fat schlub that has no athleticism to himself whatsoever, and you're worried about how slow he's on the base pass. Giancarlo Stanton's always been a physical marvel. It's when they've iced him by being on the bench 3 innings in between at bats that all of a sudden he started coming up with the pulled hamstrings and the knee issues because he wasn't loose. He wasn't invested in the game. He wasn't involved in the actual game action. There's only so much you can stay loose on the bench and only so many times you can ride the bike in between at-bats to really, truly feel involved in the game. But between left field, Josh Donaldson potentially playing third base, and whoever's playing shortstop, whether it be Peraza, Volpe, even if it's IKF, there's too much freaking out by my fellow Yankee fans because I'm here to tell you something. The roster that they are here on February 21st and the team that they're going to be going north with late in March to start the season is not the team they will be the entire year. There's an old saying that former A's general manager, now team president Billy Beane used to live by. You start the year with your team built one way and you watch them the first 2 months of the season to try to figure out, all right, what's your problems? What's your issues? What are things you can get better at? And then you spend the next 2 months adjusting, trying to upgrade in certain places. And then the final 2 months, once you have that all down pat, that's the team you try to get everybody in lockstep with and get prepared for a postseason run. So just because, they don't have a dead set left fielder right now, there's uncertainty of who's going to be the shortstop, who's going to be the fifth starter, what are you going to get out of Donaldson? Is LeMahieu going to be the third baseman for most of the year? Just because you have these questions right now doesn't mean that they are going to remain questions all year. Listen, I'm as big a critic as Brian Cashman as there is. I think he gets too much of a free pass by the Steinburners and certain members of the media, especially the one who calls them on television at times. But he's not just going to sit on his ass and let this team be this team for the entire year. He will make adjustments as the year goes along. It's just whether or not those adjustments are going to be good enough for them to get to their ultimate goal. And please, for the life of me, can they change up the mission statement from it being, any year we don't win the World Series, it's a failure? Us fans only look at it that way because that's the standard you set. Clearly, this isn't something we made up and have thrown in your face. You're the ones that are saying, it's about championships, not championship. So stop it. How about winning one under the Brian Cashman way before you talk about plural? And while I'm confident you'll do everything possible to put this team in the best position to get to the postseason, we all know that there's that demon that stands in your way. So it's about how do you get past them now? How do you get past the Houston Astros? But all of this freaking out that I see from some of my fellow Yankee fans here on February 21st has got to stop. The team is not going to remain the same all year long. Because if they do have those same problems in July, then you have something to cry about. Then you have something to complain about. But not here on February 21st. And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 for Tuesday, February 21st, 2023. Everyone, please have a great night. Have a fun, safe, happy, healthy week. And I'll talk to you guys again, same time, next Monday. Until then, peace.
We have to go. Good night, everybody. I have had enough of you. Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will you?
I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear you. I don't want to smell you. Now leave. I'll be back.